The Last Dream of the Old Oak. In the forest, high up on the steep shore, and not far from the open sea coast, stood a very old oak tree. It was just 365 years old, but that long time was to the tree as the same number of days might be to us. We wake by day and sleep by night, and then we have our dreams. It is not so with the tree. It must keep awake through 3 seasons of the year and does not get any sleep until winter comes. Winter is its time for rest. Its night after the long day of spring, summer, and fall. On many a warm summer, the flies that lived for only a day had fluttered about the old oak, enjoyed life, and felt happy. And if, for a moment, one of those tiny creatures rested on one of his large fresh leaves, the tree would always say, "Poor little creature, your whole life is only a single day. How very short. It must be quite sad." "Sad? What do you mean?" the little creature would always answer. "Everything around me is so wonderfully bright and warm and beautiful that it makes me happy. But only for one day, and then it is all over." "Over," repeated the fly. "What is the meaning of all over? Are you all over, too?" "No, I shall very likely live for thousands of your days, and my day is whole seasons long. Indeed, it is so long that you could never reckon it." "No, then I don't understand you. You may have thousands of my days, but I have thousands of moments in which I can be merry and happy. Does all the beauty of the world stop when you die?" "No," said the tree, "it will last much longer. Longer than I can even think of." "Well then," said the little fly, "we have the same time to live, only we reckon differently." And the little creature danced and floated in the air, happy in her delicate wings of gauze and velvet, happy in the balmy breezes, laden with elder blossoms and honeysuckle. From the garden hedges, primroses and mint, and the smell of all of these was so strong that the perfume was almost too delicate for the little fly. The long and beautiful day had been so full of joy and sweet delights that when the sun sank low, it felt tired of all its happiness and enjoyment. Its wings could hold it up no longer, and gently and slowly it glided down upon the soft waving blades of grass, nodded its little head as well as it could nod, and slept peacefully and sweetly. "Poor little fly," said the oak, "what a terribly short life." And so, on every summer day, as a dance was danced again, the same questions asked, and the same answers given. The same thing was kept up through many generations of tiny flies. All of them felt merry and happy. The oak kept awake through the morning of spring, the noon of summer, and the evening of fall. Its time of rest, its night, drew near. Winter was coming. Already the storms were singing, "Good night, good night." Here fell a leaf, and there fell a leaf. We will rock you and lull you. Go to sleep, go to sleep. We will sing you to sleep, and shake you to sleep, and it will do your old twigs good. They will even crackle with pleasure. Sleep sweetly, sleep sweetly. It is your 365th night, but you are but a youngster in the world. Sleep sweetly. The clouds will drop snow upon you. which will be quite a coverlet, warm and sheltering to your feet. Sweet sleep to you and pleasant dreams. And there stood the oak, stripped of all its leaves, left to rest during the whole of a long winter, and to dream many dreams in its life, as in the dreams of men. The great tree had once been small. Indeed, in its cradle it had been an acorn. It was the largest and best tree in the forest. Its top towered above all the other trees, and could be seen far out at sea, so that it served as a landmark to the sailors. It had no idea how many eyes looked eagerly for it. In its topmost branches the wood pigeon built her nest, and the cuckoo carried out his usual concerts, and his notes echoed amid the boughs. And in fall, when the leaves looked like beaten copper plates, the birds would come and rest upon the branches before taking their flight across the sea. But now it was winter. The tree stood leafless, so that everyone could see how crooked and bent were the branches that sprang from the trunk. Crows came by turns and sat on them, and talked of the hard times which were beginning, and how hard it was in winter to get food. It was just about holy Christmas time that the tree dreamed a dream. The tree had a kind of feeling that the happy time had come, and in his dream he fancied he heard the bells ringing from all the churches round. And yet it seemed to him to be a beautiful summer's day, mild and warm. His great top was crowned with spreading fresh green leaves, and sunbeams played among the leaves and branches, and the air was full of fragrance from the blossoms. Painted butterflies chased each other. The summer flies danced around him, as if the world had been made merely for them to dance and be merry in. All that had happened to the tree in a year of his life seemed to pass before him, as in a happy procession. These were wonderful and happy moments for the old tree, full of peace and joy. And yet, amid all this happiness, the tree felt a wish that all the other trees, bushes, and flowers beneath him might be able to also remember, as he had done, and feel the same happiness. The grand old oak could not be quite happy in the midst of his enjoyment, while all the rest, both great and small, were not with him. At length his wish was satisfied. Up through the clouds came the green tops of the trees, and the oak saw them rising and growing higher and higher. Bush and herb shot upward, and some even tore themselves up by the roots to rise more quickly. The birch tree was the quickest of all. Every child of the wood, even to the brown and feathery rushes, grew with the rest, while the birds rose with the melody of song. On a blade of grass that fluttered in the air like a long green ribbon sat a grasshopper, cleaning his wings with his legs. May beetles hummed, the bees murmured, the birds sang, each in his own way. The air was filled with the sound of song and gladness. But where is the little blue flower that grows by the water? Asked the oak, and the purple bellflower, and the daisy. You see, the oak wanted to have them all with him. Here we are here, sounded in voice and song. But the beautiful time of last summer, where's that? And the lilies of the valley, which last year covered the earth with their bloom, and the wild apple tree with its lovely blossoms, and all the glory of the wood, which has grown year after year. We are here, sounded voices higher in the air, as if they had flown there beforehand. Why, this is beautiful, too beautiful to believe, said the oak in a joyful tone. I have them all here, both great and small. Not one has been forgotten. Can such happiness be imagined? It seemed almost impossible. In heaven with the eternal God, it can be imagined, and it is possible, sounded the answer through the air. And the old tree, as he grew upwards and onwards, felt that his roots were loosening themselves from the earth. It is right so, it is best, said the tree. No chains hold me now. I can fly up to the very highest point in light and glory. And all I love are with me, both small and great. All are here. Such was the dream of the old oak, and while he dreamed, a mighty storm came rushing over land and sea at the holy Christmas time. The sea rolled in great billows towards the shore. There was a cracking and crashing heard in the tree. The root was torn from the ground, just at the moment when in his dream he fancied it was being loosened from the earth. He fell. His 365 years were passed as the single day of the flies. On the morning of Christmas Day, when the sun rose, the storm had ended. From all the churches sounded the joyful bells, and from every fireside, even of the smallest cottage, rose the smoke into the blue sky, like the smoke from the thank offerings on the Druids' altars. The sea became calm, and on board a great ship that had outridden the tempest during the night, all the flags were hung as a token of joy and festivity. The tree is down, the old oak, our landmark on the coast, cried the sailors. It must have fallen in the storm of last night. Who can replace it? Alas, no one. This was a funeral oration over the old tree, short but heartfelt. There it lay, stretched on the snow-covered shore, and over it sounded the notes of a song from the ship, a song of Christmas joy. Sing aloud on this happy morn, all is fulfilled, for Christ is born. With songs of joy let us loudly sing, hallelujahs to Christ our King. Thus sounded the old Christmas carol, and everyone on board the ship thought happy thoughts through the song and the prayer, even as the old tree had felt lifted up in its last, its beautiful dream on that Christmas morn. The Blue Mountains. There were once a Scotchman and an Englishman and an Irishman serving in the army together, who took it into their heads to run away on the first chance they could get. The chance came, and they took it. They went on traveling for 2 days through a great forest, without food or drink, and without coming across a single house. Every night they had to climb up into the trees for fear of the wild beasts that were in the wood. On the second morning, the Scotchman saw from the top of his tree a great castle far away. He said to himself that he would certainly die if he stayed in the forest without anything to eat but roots of grass, which would not keep him alive very long. As soon, then, as he got down out of the tree, he set off toward the castle, without so much as telling the other two that he had seen it at all. He traveled on most of the day, so that it was quite late when he reached the castle, and to his great disappointment found nothing but closed doors and no smoke rising from the chimneys. He thought there was nothing for it but to die, after all, and he had lain down beside the wall when he heard a window being opened high above him. At this he looked up and saw the most beautiful woman he had ever set eyes on. "Oh, it is fortune that has sent you to me," he said. "It is indeed," said she. "What are you in need of, or what has sent you here?" Said he, "I am dying for want of food." "Come inside then," she said. "There is plenty here." So he went in to where she was, and she opened a large room for him, where he saw a number of men lying asleep. She then set food before him, and after that showed him to the room where the others were. He lay down on one of the beds and fell sound asleep. And now we must go back to the two that he left behind him in the wood. When nightfall and the time of the wild beasts came, the Englishman happened to climb up into the very same tree on which the Scotchman was when he got sight of the castle. And as soon as the day began to dawn and the Englishman looked to the four quarters of heaven, what did he see but the castle? Off he went without saying a word to the Irishman, and everything happened to him just as it had done to the Scotchman. The poor Irishman was now left all alone. He did not know where the others had gone to, so he just stayed where he was, very sad and miserable. When night came, he climbed up into the same tree as the Englishman had done on the night before. As soon as day came, he also saw the castle and set out toward it, but when he reached it, he could see no signs of fire or living being about it. Before long, however, he heard the window open above his head, looked up, and beheld the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. He asked if she would give him food and drink, and she answered kindly and heartily that she would if he would only come inside. This he did very willingly, and she set before him food and drink that he had never seen the like of before. In the room there was a bed, with diamond rings hanging at every loop of the curtains, and everything else that was in the room was so beautiful that he actually forgot he was hungry. When she saw that he was not eating at all, she asked him what he wanted yet. Said the Irishman, "I will neither eat nor drink until I know who you are, or where you came from, or who has put you here." "I shall tell you," she said. "I am an enchanted princess, and my father has promised that the man who sets me free from the spell shall have the third of his kingdom while he is alive, and the whole of it after he is dead, and marry me as well. If ever I saw a man who looked likely to do this, you are the one. I have been here for 16 years now, and no one who ever came to the castle has asked me who I was except you. Every other man that has come so long as I have been here lies asleep in the big room down there." "Tell me, then," said the Irishman, "what is the spell that has been laid on you, and how you can be freed from it." "There is a little room there," said the princess, "and if I could get a man to stay in it from 10 o'clock till midnight for 3 nights, I should be free from the spell." "I am the man for you, then," he said. Then she brought him a pipe and tobacco, and he went into the room, but before long he heard a hammering and knocking on the outside of the door and was told to open it. "I won't," he said. The next moment the door came flying in, and those outside along with it. They knocked him down and kicked him and knelt on his body till it came to midnight, but as soon as the cock crew they all went away. The Irishman was little more than alive by this time. As soon as daylight appeared, the princess came and found him lying full length on the floor, unable to speak a word. She took a bottle, rubbed him from head to foot with something from it, and then he was as sound as ever. But after what he had got that night, he was very unwilling to try it a second time. But the princess urged him to stay, saying that the next night would not be so bad, and in the end he gave in and stayed. When it was getting near midnight, he heard them ordering him to open the door, and there were 3 of them for every one there had been the evening before. He did not make the slightest movement to go out to them or to open the door, but before long they broke it up and were in on top of him. They laid hold of him and kept throwing him between them up to the ceiling or jumping above him until the cock crew, when they all went away. When day came, the princess went to the room to see if he was still alive, and, taking the bottle, put it to his nose, which soon brought him to himself. The first thing he said then was, "I am a fool to go on getting myself killed for anyone I ever saw. I will be off and stay here no longer." When the princess heard him say this, she entreated him to stay, reminding him that one more night would free her from the spell. Besides, if there is a single spark of life in you when the day comes, the stuff that is in this bottle will make you as sound as ever. With all this, the Irishman decided to stay, but that night there were 3 at him for every one that there had been the 2 nights before, and it looks very unlikely that he would be alive in the morning after all that he got. When morning dawned and the princess came to see if he was still alive, she found him lying on the floor as if dead. She tried to see if there was breath in him, but could not quite make it out. Then she put her hand on his pulse and found a faint movement in it. So she poured what was in the bottle on him, and before long he rose up on his feet and was well as ever he was. Well, that business was finished, and the princess was freed from the spell. The princess then told the Irishman that she must go away for a little while, but would come back for him in a few days in a carriage drawn by 4 grey horses. He told her to be easy and not speak like that to him. "I have paid dear for you for the last 3 nights," he said, "if I have any share of you now." But in the twinkling of an eye she had gone. He did not know what to do with himself when he saw that she was gone, but before she went she had given him a little rod, with which he could, when he pleased, waken the men who were sleeping there. After being thus left alone, he went in and stretched himself on 3 chairs that were in the room, when what does he see coming in the door but a little fair-haired boy. "Where did you come from, my lad?" said the Irishman. "I came to make ready your food for you," said he. "Who told you to do that?" said the Irishman. "My mistress," answered the lad, "the princess that was under the spell and is now free." By this the Irishman knew that she had set the lad to wait on him. The lad also told him that his mistress wished him to be ready next morning at 9 o'clock, when she would come for him with the carriage, as she had promised. He was greatly pleased at this, and next morning, when the time was drawing near, went out into the garden. But the little fair-haired boy took a big pin out of his pocket and stuck it into the back of the Irishman's coat without his noticing, and he fell sound asleep. Before long, the princess came with a carriage and 4 horses and asked the boy whether his master was awake. He said that he wasn't. "It is bad for him," said she, when the night is not long enough for him to sleep. Tell him that if he doesn't meet me this time tomorrow, it is not likely that he will ever see me again all his life." As soon as she was gone, the fair-haired boy took the pin out of his master's coat, who instantly awoke. The first word he said to the lad was, "Have you seen her?" "Yes," said he, "and she told me to tell you that if you don't meet her at 9 o'clock tomorrow, you will never see her again." He was very sorry when he heard this, and could not understand why the sleep should have fallen upon him just when she was coming. He decided, however, to go to bed early that night in order to rise in time next morning, and so he did. When it was getting near 9 o'clock, he went out to the garden to wait till she came, and the fair-haired boy along with him. But as soon as the boy got the chance, he stuck the pin into his master's coat again, and he fell asleep as before. Precisely at 9 o'clock came the princess in the carriage with 4 horses, and asked the boy if his master had got up yet, but he said, "No, he is asleep, just as he was yesterday." "Dear, dear," said the princess, "I am sorry for him. Was the sleep he had last night not enough for him? Tell him that he will never see me here again. Here is a sword that you will give him in my name, and my blessing with it." With this she went off, and as soon as she had gone, the boy took the pin out of his master's coat. He awoke instantly, and the first word he said was, "Have you seen her?" The boy said that he had, and there was the sword she had left for him. The Irishman was ready to kill him out of anger, but when he gave a glance over his shoulder, the fair-haired boy was gone. Being thus left all alone, he thought of going into the room where all the men were lying asleep, and there among the rest he found his 2 friends. Then he remembered what the princess had told him, that he had only to touch them with the rod she had given him, and they would all awake. And the first he touched were his own friends. They started to their feet at once, and he gave them as much silver and gold as they could carry when they went away. There was plenty to do before he got all the others wakened, for the 2 doors of the castle were crowded with them all the long day. He was so grieved at the loss of the princess that finally he thought he would go about the world to see if he could find anyone to give him news of her. So he took the best horse in the stable and set out. 3 years he spent traveling through forests and wilderness, but could not find anyone to tell him anything of the princess. At last he fell into so great despair that he thought he would put an end to his own life, and to do this he laid hold of the sword that she had given him by the hands of the fair-haired boy. But on drawing it from its sheath, he noticed that there was some writing on one side of the blade. He looked at this and read there, "You will find me in the Blue Mountains." This made him take heart again, and he gave up the idea of killing himself, thinking that he would go on in hopes of meeting someone who could tell him where the Blue Mountains were. After he had gone a long way without thinking where he was going, he saw at last a light far away and made straight for it. On reaching it, he found it came from a little house. As soon as the man inside heard the noise of the horses' feet, he came out to see who was there. Seeing a stranger on horseback, he asked what brought him there and where he was going. "I have lived here," said he, "for 300 years, and all that time I have not seen a single person but yourself." "I have been going for about the last 3 years," said the Irishman, "to see if I could find anyone who can tell me where the Blue Mountains are. Come in, said the old man, and stay with me all night. I have a book that tells the history of the world. I will go through it tonight, and if there is such a place as the Blue Mountains in it, we shall find it out. The Irishman stayed there all night, and as soon as morning came, rose to go. The old man said he had not gone to sleep all night for going through the book, but there was not a word about the Blue Mountains in it. But I'll tell you what, he said, if there is such a place on earth at all, I have a brother who lives 900 miles from here, and he is sure to know where they are, if anyone in this world does. The Irishman answered that he could never go those 900 miles, for his horse was giving out already. That doesn't matter, said the old man. I can do better than that. I have only to blow my whistle, and you will be at my brother's house before nightfall. So he blew his whistle, and the Irishman did not know where on earth he was until he found himself at the other old man's door, who also told him that it was 300 years since he'd seen anyone, and asked him where he was going. I am going to see if I can find anyone that can tell me where the Blue Mountains are, he said. If you will stay with me tonight, said the old man, I have a book of the history of the world, and I shall know where they are before daylight, if there is such a place in it at all. He stayed there all night, but there was not a word in the book about the Blue Mountains. Seeing that he was rather discouraged, the old man told him he had a brother 900 miles away, and that if anyone could find out about them, it would be he. And I will help you, he said, to reach the place where he lives before night. So he blew his whistle, and the Irishman landed at the brother's house before nightfall. When the old man saw him, he said he had not seen a single man for 300 years, and was very much surprised to see anyone come to him now. Where are you going? He asked. I am going about asking for the Blue Mountains, said the Irishman. The Blue Mountains, said the old man. Yes, said the Irishman. I never heard the name before, but if there are any, I shall find them out. I am master of all the birds in the world, and I have only to blow my whistle, and everyone will come to me. I shall then ask each of them to tell me where it came from, and if there is any way of finding out the Blue Mountains, that is it. So he blew his whistle, and when he blew it, all of the birds of the world began to gather. The old man questioned each of them as to where they had come from, but there was not one of them that had come from the Blue Mountains. After he had run over them all, however, he remembered a big eagle that was missing and wondered that it had not come. Soon afterward, he saw something big coming towards him, darkening the sky. It kept coming nearer and growing bigger, and what was this, after all, but the eagle? When she arrived, the old man scolded her and asked what had kept her so long behind. I couldn't help it, she said. I had more than 20 times further to come than any bird that has come here today. Where have you come from, then? Said he. From the Blue Mountains, said she. Indeed, said the old man, and what are they doing there? They are making ready this very day, said the eagle, for the marriage of the daughter of the king of the Blue Mountains. For 3 years now she has refused to marry anyone, until she should give up the hope of the coming of the man who freed her from the spell. Now she can wait no longer, for 3 years is the time that she agreed with her father to wait without marrying. The Irishman knew that it was for himself she had been waiting so long, but he had no hope of reaching the Blue Mountains all his life. The old man noticed how sad he grew, and asked the eagle what she would take for carrying this man on her back to the Blue Mountains. "I must have 60 cattle killed," said she, "and cut up into quarters, and every time I look over my shoulder, he must throw one of them into my mouth." As soon as the Irishman and the old man heard that, they went out hunting, and before evening they had killed 60 cattle. They made quarters of them, as the eagle told them, and then the old man asked her to lie down till they could get it all heaped on her back. First of all, they had to get a ladder of 14 steps so they could get on the eagle's back, and there they piled the meat up as well as they could. Then the old man told the Irishman to mount, and to remember to throw a quarter of beef up to her every time she looked round. He went up, and the old man gave the word to be off, and off she flew. And every time she turned her head, the Irishman threw a quarter of beef into her mouth. As they came near the borders of the kingdom of the Blue Mountains, however, the beef was gone, and when the eagle looked over her shoulder, what was the Irishman at but throwing a stone between her tail and her neck? At this she turned a complete somersault and threw the Irishman off into the sea, where he fell into the bay that was right in front of the king's palace. Fortunately, the points of his toes just touched the bottom, and he managed to get ashore. When he went up into the town, all the streets were gleaming with light, and the wedding of the princess was just about to begin. He went into the first house he came to, and this happened to be the house of the king's hen keeper. He asked the old woman what was causing all the noise and light in the town. "The princess," said she, "is going to be married tonight against her will, for she had been expecting every day that the man who freed her from her spell would come." "There's a gold piece for you," said he. "Go and bring her here." The old woman went, and soon came back along with the happy princess. She and the Irishman rushed into each other's arms, and were married, and had a great wedding that lasted for a year and a day.